I'm Indy Neidell, and this is Out of the Foxholes, where I sit here in the chair of infinite knowledge and answer all your questions about the Second World War. Is that Hank? No, it's Hank. Hank Torda asks, when did the British government come to know that Nazi Germany was going to attack the Soviet Union? Operation Barbarossa, the planned German attack on the Soviet Union, is something that has been underway since July of last year, 1940. Already then, one particular Brit prophesied that Germany would soon turn its attentions toward the Soviet Union. Prime Minister Winston Churchill. The Soviets are the only real obstacle left besides Britain in creating Hitler's dream of German hegemony in Europe. Churchill reaches out to Joseph Stalin, who dismisses him, thinking this is all just a ruse to bring the Soviet Union into Britain's war. British intelligence received small hints of the attack in August and then in the autumn of 1940. However, it's first in early 1941 that Churchill's fears begin to be backed up by actual hard evidence, like Polish underground movements report a huge influx of German troops into Poland. In April, decryption of German radio traffic shows a steady flow of troops and trains towards the German-Soviet border. In May, decrypted Enigma signals have the same results. The idea of a German attack on the Soviet Union becomes more and more widespread among British leaders. Churchill wires Stalin again, and again Stalin dismisses him, still not trusting the British. More Enigma signals further show, well, which way the wind is blowing, and British suspicions get stronger and stronger. Still, it is not until June 1941, when the Wehrmacht actually crosses the border into the Soviet Union, that the British become 100% aware of what is happening. Harel Khalifa asks, what happened to Jewish communities in Ethiopia during World War II? Well, when Benito Mussolini invades and conquers Abyssinia, now Ethiopia, in 1935, Jews living there can be divided roughly into two different categories, right? Just regular average Jews and the Beta Israel community. Now, Beta Israel is a distinct Jewish community that has lived mostly isolated from the outside world in northwest Ethiopia for a millennium. Now, even though they are Jews, they've developed their own culture, their own traditions, their own values, and it is debated if they are, in fact, real Jews or not. Now, when Italy initially annexes the land, Mussolini tries to paint a picture of benevolence. The Orthodox Christian Emperor Haile Selassie had been, well, for the Ethiopian Jews, Abyssinian Jews, far from a perfect ruler. And Mussolini tries to take the place of a savior. And this is a gigantic farce. First of all, the Ethiopian Jews are seen as a lesser race by the Italians in general, as they are both black and Jewish. They are often harassed. The fascist regime is not as anti-Semitic as the Nazi one, though. And the Italians are seen by many Ethiopian Jews as just slightly worse than Haile Selassie. Nevertheless, Benito Mussolini still recognizes the Jewish question in German-occupied Europe. And for that, he has a very bizarre answer. He states that the universal Jewish problem can only be resolved in one way, by the creation in some part of the world, not in Palestine, of a Jewish state. But if not Palestine, then where? Well, according to Mussolini, in northwestern Ethiopia, alongside the Beta Israel community. You simply take all of the world's Jews, put them in the districts of Gojam and Begemder, and voila, problem solved. This would then create a semi-autonomous Jewish state ruled by Rome. But this never happened. And, okay, this one's anonymous, apparently. I was wondering what happened to prisoners of war when their country surrendered to Germany. Did they get to go home, or were they kept in work or concentration camps? Well, okay. When Poland falls in 1939, and most of Western Europe in 1940, Germany then has on its hands like 2.5 million POWs. And this is far more than German high command ever expected before the beginning of the war. The majority of these, close on to 2 million, are French. These prisoners are kept in a whole bunch of POW camps all across Germany. Now, Germany, alongside all the other big powers except for Japan and Soviet Union, had signed and ratified the Geneva Convention back in 1929, with its provisions for prisoners of war. And a side note here first, Joseph Stalin did not sign the Geneva Convention because in his eyes, no soldier of the Red Army would ever surrender. Well, the Geneva Convention dictates that POWs can correspond with their families and their friends, they can practice their religion, and they don't have to give up any information they can refuse except for their name and their rank. It also states that wounded prisoners are to be treated. No more than 1 month in solitary confinement is to be given as a punishment for a prisoner who has tried to escape. The Red Cross should also be allowed to inspect POW camps. Okay, so did Germany then adhere to this? Well, no, but not as badly as you might think here in 1941. Especially the British, Dutch, and Norwegian prisoners, well, they're treated pretty well. They're Anglo-Saxon or Germanic races, right? So they're placed in proper living conditions, and their German captors behave fairly reasonably towards them. British prisoners quickly agree that German camps are far better than the Italian ones, for example. Even so, conditions are harsh. It's a prison camp. Men are forced to perform heavy manual labor, and the rations are often pretty meager. The Red Cross delivers food and cigarettes, but they can't help everywhere. The conditions are much tougher for French and Polish prisoners, however, who do not receive the same benefits in housing and in their workload. Jewish soldiers are harassed, and they're often shot upon capture. French POWs, they're a real problem for Philippe Pétain and the Vichy French government. See, Adolf Hitler states that all of the prisoners will be returned after an armistice is signed with Britain. However, after the Battle of Britain, this does not seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. And meanwhile, there's a severe labor shortage in France because of all the men in prison in Germany. So in late 1940, Germany begins to repatriate French POWs whose professions are badly needed, like doctors or postal workers. In 1941, this policy is extended to include POWs who served in the Great War or who have 4 or more children. One particular prisoner released in this period, actually, is philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. Still, a large part of the French male population remain as prisoners of war inside Germany. During the war, 70,000 French POWs will escape from German camps. Okay, that is all for today from Out of the Foxholes. If you have a question you want answered, follow the link in the description to the Time Ghost community where you can ask it. If you would like to see our Between Two Wars episode about the Italian invasion of Abyssinia, you can click right here for that. Do not forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time.